StreetAllDay.com. Into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us out there to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy. This show, this daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to be a better podcast host. Now, I got this question. I'm answering this question actually that I got from Quora, which is a question and answer, crowdsourcing question and answer website. It's Quora, where anyone like you or I can post a question, and then based on how good your question is, you can crowdsource answers from all over the world. Whoever decides to come on the show, notices your question, and wants to offer an answer, can post an answer to this question. So I saw this question, and I answered it on Quora, and I'm going to share with you here today some of the answers that all the answers that I gave to the person who had posted this question. So any of you who is planning on starting a podcast, or you already have a podcast, and especially those of you who have guests on your show, and I believe the person who was asking this question was offer some context about with the guests that they have on their show. Most shows are guest based. Most people who have podcasts probably couldn't do a show, so consistently where it's just them talking, and I don't knock them for it. That's why I do my show like this. So it's something specifically unique about it. But if you're going to have a show, because podcasting is really big right now, is only getting bigger. There was a time when Instagramming was a thing, then it was YouTubing. First it was blogging, then it was Instagramming, YouTubing. Nowadays, this podcasting is the hottest thing that everybody's jumping into. Not everybody's good at it, but everybody's giving it a shot. I'm going to tell you here today how you can be a better host of your own podcast moving forward. Okay? Point number one, the topic once again is how to be a better podcast host. Number one thing, do better and more thorough research on your guests. This is a huge one right here. For anyone who has their own show, the quality of your interviews when you have guests on your show is 100% based on the quality of the questions you ask, and the quality of the questions you ask is 100% based on, basically your ability to ask questions. And what enhances your ability to ask a person a question? The amount of stuff you know about them. What do you know about this person so that you can actually ask them something? Because if you don't have any real information on them, all you know about a person is whatever they gave you in their 150-word bio, or whatever's on their website, or you looked at the last 5 posts they put up on Instagram, or you've seen a couple of YouTube videos, or whatever it is that however it is they pitch and present themselves. That's all you know. That's fine. I mean, you can get some surface level information off that person, but here's the problem with that is that everybody gets surface level information about that person. All right, there's surface level information that almost all of you know about me. You know that I used to play professional basketball. You know that I was on YouTube. You know that I've created all this content more than anybody. You know that I had this philosophy called Work on Your Game. You know that I talk about discipline, confidence, mental toughness, and personal initiative. You know I've done TED Talks. You know that I write books. You know these things about me, these surface level things. And when somebody asks me for my bio, I pretty much give them what I just told you. Okay? In 150 words, and I make it look good. That's pretty much what I get people when they ask me for my bio. Someone who's never heard of me, that's interesting. But if you've heard of me already, or if you heard me on other interviews, or you have some kind of feel for me, or if it's just me and I'm talking about it, it's not interesting to me if that's all you're asking me about. And the only way you could ask me anything else is to do a little bit more research on me. And here's the great thing about the people that you're going to have on your show. If you're having them on your show, that means they probably accomplished some things that make them worth talking to, which means most of the time, people who have accomplished things that are worth talking about and make them worth talking to, they probably publicized it in some way, shape, or form. If they're not the type to toot their own horn, somebody else is publicizing it. That's usually what happens with people who are really good at getting the word out and getting their information out there. So what you need to do, Mr. or Mrs. Podcast host, is do more research on your guests. If they have a book, read the book. Don't know about the book. Don't see that it's on Amazon. Get the book and read the book. If they have a show, listen to the show. If they have a channel on YouTube, watch some of the videos. Whatever it is, if they're a writer, read the shit that they write. Get more information on the person. Go back to when they first started. Read some of their early stuff. Watch some of their earlier videos. Listen to their early episodes of their podcast. Find out things about them listen to some of the interviews they've already done. Find out some things about them that it seems like nobody ever asked them about. Notice things about them that it seems like most people wouldn't be paying attention to. Ask them something that they haven't been asked before. This is the key to asking better questions, is having better information. And a lot of podcast shows that I listen to, even some that I've been on, the questions are so surface level. It's fine. I mean, I don't mind sharing my surface level information with audiences all day, every day. I mean, that's why I create so much content and got a website named after myself. The problem is, over time, if you want to give your audience, you as the podcast host, you want to give your audience a little bit more than what they could get from anybody else's show, you got to ask your guests something that will bring things out of them that haven't been brought out of them before. When I go on other people's shows, 95% of the questions that I get asked are questions I've been asked before. So I'm perfect. I can answer them perfectly, which is great. Great for me. Easy for me. But am I giving the audience anything that they otherwise couldn't get listening to me on somebody else's show? Now, you as the host, again, what are you trying to give your guests? Same thing that they could get same thing that guest is given to 10 other shows they've been on in the last 10 weeks, or you want to get them something else? I personally have been a guest on probably 150 different podcasts in the last 5 years. And most of the hosts whose shows I've been on, they only skim the surface to have enough material to ask surface level questions. Why is this? Maybe because they just don't want to put the time into really getting deep information on their guests. Maybe they don't have the time. Maybe they just don't want to do the work. Maybe they've never even thought of this concept, what I'm talking about here. I don't know why, but I'm just telling you what it is. Better questions lead to better answers, especially when you're talking to people who appear in media all the time. I appear in media often enough that, again, like I just said, I'm used to the questions. I could tell you the top 10 questions I'm going to get asked every time I'm on somebody's show. Tell me a little bit about your background. How'd you get into playing professional basketball? How'd you transition from basketball to what you're doing now? How'd you first get started on, let's say, writing a book or doing TED Talks or playing basketball overseas? Tell me what this whole work on your game philosophy is about. You talk about discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative. Can you tell a little bit more about each one? I get asked the same questions every single time. If you're going to interview me on your show, I'm not mad at you if you ask these questions, okay? But if you want to ask me something that I haven't been asked before, all right, don't ask those. Or maybe you could ask those and just make the interview a little bit longer and ask me some more stuff. But you got to do the work. In order to come up with the questions, you got to do the work. And if you're not willing to do the work, then it's not going to happen. Some great examples of this. Actually, we'll get to that as we go and move on. Point number 2. Today's topic is how to be a better podcast host. The second thing you can do, and this is something as a guest. I am a frequent podcast guest. And I don't know how other people who are guests on shows feel, but I'm the type of person who I'm experienced, but I'm not that experienced that I'm jaded to the experience of being on somebody's show. When I get on somebody's show, each time I'm still excited to get in front of whoever their audience is, and I'm excited to talk to the host. I'm excited to get my message out to whomever is listening who has probably never heard of me before. I'm not that jaded that it's just like, another interview, here's another one, answer the same questions. I'm not jaded. I'm telling you that to tell you this. I would really appreciate if I could go on somebody's show and they said to me, Dre, first let me tell you what I usually hear when I go on somebody's show. Somebody will say something like, our show is usually about 15 minutes, or we go about 25 to 30 minutes, or we'll go somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. That's usually about the length that my audience likes. Every once in a while, I get somebody who will go an hour. I have never, ever, in all the shows that I've been on, I'm not sure I've been on a single show where they told me or asked me to set aside more than an hour of time. I don't think I've been on one. I would have to think about it, but I don't think there is one. I would have to look, because I've been on too many. But I'm telling you all that to tell you this. I would be really excited if a show's host reached out to me and said, Dre, I want to have you on my show, but I want to go really deep. I need you to put aside 3 hours for our conversation, or 4 hours, or put aside the whole day. I don't know how long it's going to take. I would be excited if somebody had said that. Why? Let me tell you why I would be excited. Not because I just want to give all my time away to that person in their show, but because if we're going to be talking for 4 hours, that means I'm going to get to talk for 4 hours. And you know what people who have achieved things like to do? They like to talk about them. They like to share what they've done. They like to give people knowledge about what they've achieved. Nobody goes on a media appearance because they don't want to talk about themselves. All right? People don't like talking about themselves, don't appear in media. Me, I like to talk about myself. You, if you've achieved things, you probably like to talk about stuff. You like to talk about yourself. You have things that you've accomplished. It would be great. Any podcast host who is listening to this, you're going to have me on your show. Take more time with me. Ask me for more of my time. Go deeper. First of all, you got to do some research so you can actually hold a 3-hour conversation. But you got to actually, and then you can ask the questions, but be able to dig in the things that I say. I might say something, and instead of just glossing over it and going to your next question, you ask me question number 3, I answer it. There's something I said in the answer to question number 3 that would be a really interesting vein to dig into if you would catch it. But instead of doing that, you just glossed right over it and went to question number 4. Golden opportunity blown. Golden opportunity to give to your audience blown. Golden opportunity to get something out of your guest that the guest has never shared on any other show. You blew it because you weren't paying attention. Or because you felt like you need to get through the interview because you only got 45 minutes because you created some arbitrary limit to how long your episodes can be. Listen, your episodes can be as long as you want it to be. I've given you all hour-plus long episodes, and it's just me talking. So imagine if somebody was asking me some questions, some good questions, how long I can go. Taking more time with your guests allows you to go deeper and allows you to get more out of the conversation. And getting more out of the conversation equals what? The very point of you having a show, which is giving value to your listeners. The point of your show is not to be quick so that you fit into the time frame, this arbitrary time frame that you think your listeners is their limit. I've been on so many shows where the host will say something like, well, we're going to go 30 minutes because that's how long my audience wants. Or we'll go 45 minutes. I found that that's what the audience is interested in. Most of the time, they don't even know. All right. When people say that, I never say anything back to them, but I always think to myself when they say something like, well, we're going to go 45 minutes because that's as long as the audience can go. I always think to myself, did you ever test going an hour and a half? And did your audience specifically tell you, I don't want to hear an hour and a half episode? Maybe. And here's the thing y'all got to understand about consumers. All right. They don't always know what they want until you give it to them. It's really hard for example, there's a program that we're putting together right now. It may or may not be out by the time y'all hear this episode. But it's a program that we've been putting together. We talked to several people in our audience to find out what their challenges are, what they need, what they want, how we can help, etc. Then we put together a working model of what it would be. And then we showed it to some people. And then we talked to them again and said, what do you think? What are you seeing? What are your questions? What's missing? What could be better? What could be worse? What do we need to get rid of? What questions have we not answered with this? And we got their feedback. And we got really great feedback from them. Let me tell you why we got great feedback. Not only because we asked great questions, but because we showed them something tangible that they could look at and they could understand what it was and what direction it was going in. That's how they could offer us feedback. If we had just said, well, what if we do this or we do this or what do you think we should do? They would give us some feedback, but it wouldn't be very useful because, listen, your consumer's job is not to come up with the ideas. That's your job. Henry Ford said, this is the creator of the Ford car manufacturer, the Model T car. He said, if I asked my consumers what they wanted before I created the car, you know what they would have said? They would have said, we want a faster horse. Because that's what people were riding back then, horses. Steve Jobs said, I couldn't ask the consumers if they wanted a phone, if they wanted an iPhone. They didn't know what the iPhone is. It was not in their consciousness. He said, the consumer is stupid. We can't ask them what they want. We have to tell them what they want, and then they'll want it. You as the creator, you think you can't do a show that's longer than 30 minutes. I guarantee you can. If you have 60 minutes of compelling material, your audience will listen to a 60-minute episode. Oh, their commute to work is only 30 minutes. Okay, fine. So their commute home is another 30 minutes. So they can listen to the first part on the way to work and the second part on the way home. And I guarantee you if it's compelling enough, they will take longer to get to work just to listen to the rest of it, or they'll find a way to listen to it at work. Why? Because when content is compelling, people will find a way to get it. There is no arbitrary time limit of what people are willing to listen to. Right? How long are the episodes of this show? I got episodes that have been 17 minutes. I got episodes that be an hour. You'll listen to all of them. They're good enough. If it's trash, I don't care if the episode's 5 minutes. You ain't listening. And if it's great, it could be 3 hours. You'll listen. Why? Because good material is good material, ladies and gentlemen. It has nothing to do with how long it is. And there are so many. It's unbelievable. And I'm giving some game to any of you podcast hosts out there or future podcast hosts. There's so many hosts out there who have created this arbitrary limit of how long their episodes can be. And I'm like, where the hell are you getting this number from? It's not true. It's absolutely not true. If the content is good, people will listen, okay? My number one pet peeve about guesting on other people's shows is how we don't get to go deep. People ask me all these surface level fucking questions. We don't really get to talk about anything that goes beyond the surface. Like anything that they can't get out of reading my book, they're not getting from that episode, which is cool because they would have otherwise never heard of me, so they wouldn't have got the book. But the point is, I don't get to talk about anything other than what I'm used to talking about on every other show, because a lot of these hosts, a lot of you hosts, some of you are listening to me right now, you feel you need to make your interviews shorter to respect the attention span of your audience. Listen, everybody has a super long attention span when the material, whatever they're paying attention to, is compelling enough. Right. Any of you have children? All right. If you were in labor for 3 hours, were you paying attention for 3 hours? Yes. If your labor was 30 minutes, would you pay attention for 30 minutes? Yes. If your labor had been 10 hours, would you have said, nah, you know what, let's cut this labor short. You know, I don't really have that much more attention. No, you would have gone as long as you needed to go. There is no attention span ceiling that you need to hit, or when you go past that, people stop listening. If people stop listening when you go past a certain period of time on your show, that is because that part of the show is garbage. That's why people aren't listening. It's not because it's too much time for them. If I told you, listen to this episode for an hour, and I guarantee you when this hour's up, I'm going to deposit $1,000 in your account via Venmo or Cash App or PayPal, would you listen for an hour? Why? Because it's a compelling enough reason for you to do it. Look at shows like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, super, super popular shows. Joe Budden, who's in the hip hop field, some of you may not have heard of him. All very popular shows. Guess how long their episodes are? 2 hours, 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And these are some of the most popular shows out there. Now I know. You're not Joe Rogan. You're not Tim Ferriss. I get it. Question: how did they become who they are? By doing the things that most other show hosts either think they can't do or are unwilling to do. Both Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss. I don't listen to Joe Budden that much, but I like the way his show is set up. He has a co-host with him, so it's a little bit different. But Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss are both solo hosts. They almost always have other people on the shows with them, and they go deep. They do research. Tim Ferriss, I know, does a lot of research on his guests. He's read their books. He's looked back at old interviews. He always opens his interviews by asking a question that is way different than the questions those guests get asked all the other times when they're on other people's shows. He asks a different question. He says, tell me about this. And he'll mention some random speech that the person gave 8 years ago at some obscure conference that nobody else knows about. And the person will say, and the person's eyes will light up and say, oh yeah, I remember that. And then they'll start talking about it. Now he's already hooked them in and he's hooked the listener in. And then they talk for 2 more hours. What's stopping you from doing that? Oh, I know what's stopping you from doing it. First of all, you haven't done the research to be able to ask that kind of question. And second of all, you haven't conditioned yourself to do that kind of work. Sit there for 2 hours and actually have a compelling conversation with another person. Point number 3. Today's show is how to become a better podcast host. The third thing you can do is treat your show like a business. Even if it's not a business yet. Even if your podcast is not making you money directly, treat it like a business. Don't treat your podcast like some side project that you do just because every other, quote, thought leader, close quote, is doing it. A lot of thought leaders don't think at all. Treat your show like it is a business, meaning invest time into putting your show together. Invest thought into how you are doing your show. Invest time and thought into how you can make your show unique from every other show out there. If you're going to do a show on personal growth, look up every other personal growth show and tell me, what are you bringing to the table that no other show is bringing to the table? If you can't answer, you shouldn't be doing a show. Are you improving on the silence, or are you just adding to the noise? What are you offering in your show that is not being offered anywhere else? Let me tell you this show. First of all, it's one of the only solo shows. It's one of the only solo daily shows. Solo daily personal growth shows. This is a show where, as a person who came from the sports world, but the material I'm talking about is not sports related. You don't have to be a sports fan or a sports player to understand every single thing that I talk about here on this show. Most of you don't have no association with sports at all, but you still follow the show. Can you name another show that fits any of those 4 bullet points that I just gave you? No. That's what makes this show unique. You need to be able to answer that for yourself. What is unique about your show? What do people get at your show that they do not get anywhere else? This is what I mean by treating your show like a business. If you were investing money in your show, you had to pay money to put your show out, and the only way you made that money back was by making sure that your show was so unique that people had to come to you, you would put that time in, wouldn't you? Of course you would, because otherwise you go broke putting the show out. So treat your show like that. Treat your show as if it's costing you to put it out, and then you put that much time and effort into making sure you get a return on investment in the form of people listening to your show, because what you offer cannot be replaced, replicated, or duplicated, or gotten anywhere other than from you. That's what I mean when I say treating your show like a business. And point number 4, today's topic is how to become a better podcast host. Be consistent. This is the simplest way to become a better writer, a better athlete, a better YouTuber, a better podcaster, a better business owner, a better parent, a better husband or wife, a better boyfriend or girlfriend, a better whatever you're trying to do in life. Be consistent. This could be the first point of the episode, but we're making it this last point here today. This is the most valuable thing you can do to make your show better. Now, what's the definition of consistent? Let's make sure we're all on the same page as to what exactly this word means. I didn't have it in front of me here, so I'm going to tell you in a second what the word consistent means. Consistent means, I got to look it up now. Now, I've earned the right to be able to do this because y'all have heard the show enough and y'all know I deliver. Consistent means acting or done in the same way over time, especially so as to be fair or accurate. Let me say it one more time. Consistent. Acting or done in the same way over time, especially so as to be fair or accurate. Unchanging in nature, standard, or effect over time. Meaning, people need to know what they're getting and you need to give it to them. Let me say it again. People know what they're getting and you give it to them. This could be the first point. This could be the only point. But I'm half assuming that you already know this. But I'm also half assuming that you don't. Listeners of your show, people who will subscribe and follow and tell their friends, they want to know what they're getting, meaning what is the theme of your show? What is your show about? They want to know when it's coming out, meaning your publishing schedule and generally what they should expect in terms of how much time they're going to need for each episode. And they want to know how you do it. What is the format? Is it an interview, you and one other person? Is it taking your YouTube videos and repurposing them to be podcast episodes? Is it you doing a live stream on Facebook and then just downloading the audio and putting it up on the podcast app? Is it you getting in front of a microphone and specifically talking for the podcast? Is it you and a co-host or a couple of co-hosts and in front of a live studio audience making jokes and getting audience reactions? Is it you and another person just talking one-on-one about certain topics every day, but it's just you and that same person every single time, no guests? Is it just you by yourself? What is the format of the show? Be professional, ladies and gentlemen. Professionals need to be consistent in their delivery because people don't pay for inconsistent results. Professionals get paid because they are consistent. They're not consistent because they get paid. They get paid because they're consistent. So figure out what your format's going to be. What is your style going to be? What is your approach going to be? And before you decide on this, ask yourself, what can I actually do? And what am I willing to do? Those are two different questions. What can I do? What am I willing to do? What separates me from everybody else out there? If you haven't answered these questions, you shouldn't have a podcast. Maybe you can start one, and then along the way, you make your adjustments till you find your way. All right, I'm not mad at that. You do that, I'm not mad at it. All right, so I'm giving you an out clause from that point. Let's recap today's class, which is how to be a better podcast host. This is a question that was asked on Quora. I answered it there, and I'm offering that answer to you here today. Number 1, do better and more thorough research on your guests. I've been on 150 shows, and most of the shows that I've been on, they ask me the same surface level questions because people just do not do the work of learning more about me. Therefore, they can't answer any better questions. Ask any better questions. Number 2, take more time with these guests. This allows you to go deeper and get more out of the conversation, which equals the actual point of your show. I'm hoping the point of your show was to give value to your listeners. All right, not just to say you have a podcast. Number 1 pet peeve I have about guesting on other people's shows is when they talk about some arbitrary deadline for how long the show can be before their audience will stop listening or some bullshit like that. That is wrong. Listen to Joe Rogan. Look at Tim Ferriss. Look at Joe Budden. I know you're not those people, but question, how'd they become that? By doing what most others think they couldn't do or just not willing to do. Number 3, treat your show as if it's a business. Show business. Don't treat your show as if it's some side project that you do just because every other thought leader is doing the exact same thing. Invest time and thought into how you do your show. The money and equipment will come behind the investment. Number 4, be consistent. This could be the first point. It could be the only point. Assuming that you already know this, but assuming that you don't. Listeners want to know what they're getting, i.e. the theme, when it's coming out, i.e. the publishing schedule and the length, and how it's coming out, i.e. the format. Be professional. Professionals get paid because they are consistent. They don't become consistent because they're getting paid. Understand the chicken before the egg, ladies and gentlemen. You want to be a better podcast host? I just told you how to do it. Work on your game. Dre, all